Please give a warm welcome to producer Nikon Kwantu and director Geeta Gandbhir. Thank you both for being here. When Geeta, when I introduced the film, I said to you outside, that the subject matter is so powerful, but your filmmaking skills, the form in which you put it together matches the power of the subject. When did you realize that the body cam footage was the entry to tell the story?
Certainly. So we have a personal connection to this story because Ajika Owens was a family friend. So that's how we came to the story. And in the beginning, we were working the minute this happened, we got the call, and then we were working with the family to try to keep the story in the media and because we were worried that Susan would walk. And so do you want to talk about how we got the body cam footage?
Sure. So we got the body cam footage through the family lawyer, Anthony Thomas. He, through the Freedom of Information Act, he sued the Sheriff's Department and got all of the footage surrounding Susan. Since she called the police so many times, we just got everything. And we got the police interviews for the neighbor, from the neighborhood, all kinds of stuff. We got ring footage. Mm-hmm. We got all of this. We got all of these files, and so we looked at this stuff, and once we started to look it over, we realized there's another story here. We were seeing the neighborhood in this way that we didn't expect to, and we were seeing Susan in a way that we didn't expect because we didn't realize how often she was calling the police, right. And this happened over a course of 2 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you had gone originally, you went down there right away, Nikon, to shoot, but there was no thought of making a film about this, correct?
No, it was what Geeta was saying. We were trying to collect media, so we had two issues at the time. The first issue was that Susan, although was arrested by the time we went down, we didn't know if she was going to post bail and then be free, right? Mm-hmm. And the second issue was we didn't know exactly if she was going to be charged with something that was fitting to the crime, right? Correct. We didn't know how severe the charge was going to be. So, as what Geeta said, we were trying to get footage and interviews with the family and people. We were also doing sort of like call to actions, so that we can get awareness to the community. And also put pressure. We want to put pressure on the, the establishment there, so that they wouldn't just take it very lightly. I'm sorry.
It was about keeping it alive, just to add, in the media. Again, the media pressure, so that it wouldn't languish, or be dismissed. And again, stand your ground was a prevalent issue.
Approachingly cinematically, blown away by your approach of just showing us things chronologically, unfiltered, and then all of a sudden we're immersed in this community, and it's so rich, and the details. I mean, can you tell us about editing the process where it is just sort of, it's like cinema verite, plays right in front of us?
So I come originally from a narrative background. My intro to filmmaking was in narrative, and I worked in narrative for about 12 years in my career. So that's my training. And I think there's a couple of reasons the decision to be to use the body cam footage was made. One, it's so immersive. Again, like you said, it plays, the cops inadvertently function like multicam. Again, correct. Unintentionally. They were on the ground talking to different people, wandering around. So they gave us this, as Nikon mentioned, they basically gave us this picture of the neighborhood and that beautiful little community as they were before. Mm-hmm. And you never in this kind of, unfortunately, these kind of terrible incidents happen all too often, and you only see the community after. usually, right? They're grieving. If there's any sort of footage, it's from the day of or the day before. We could recreate this community as they were through the police body camera footage, and that to me was really important because because it showcases again what existed before and how one outlier with a gun could change all of that. But the editing, when you talk about that, I had an incredible editor, Viri, and I think for me, coming from a cinema verite or and also a narrative background, it was so important to show and not tell. I think a lot of times in documentary, the choices are to, have talking heads or to have people relay the story to you. And we trust our audience. We believe that the best way is to allow things to unfold as they did, and to believe that the audience can get it is, again, we think we don't have to lead our audience, that they are smart enough that if they are immersed in this situation, that they can follow the story.
From the get-go, there was something so powerfully subversive that is happening where Nikon, we have access through the cops' cameras into this community, but usually, but they are the outside force, but simultaneously, they're the ones that give us an entry to this amazing community. Can you tell us about that aspect?
So what was so interesting about the police is that they, when you watch the footage in the beginning, it's almost like they didn't know how to handle body camera footage, right? Like the first woman is kind of has her hands in front of the camera.
Correct.
And then as we go along, you see people just kind of, directing their bodies so that they're just capturing the community. And it almost seemed, like they knew that we were going to do this one day, and they didn't. But but what was interesting is that we had so much of the community, and they shot so much. I say shot, but they captured so much of this neighborhood. As Geeta said the other day, sometimes they captured so much they were just like walking around. Like we didn't even use some of that footage, but. It really told this beautiful story and also this tragic story, right? Because it captured a lot of what Susan, her thinking and, how she was.
I just want to add, though, that for me, and I think for us, we understand that usually police body camera footage is, again, it can be often used, it's a violent tool of the state that is used to dehumanize and criminalize vulnerable communities, and particularly communities of color, right? And it's used as surveillance and to protect the police. I also was really important to me to take that use of the footage and subvert it, and to flip it on its head, and to show, again, it was unintentional, but we had the opportunity to, and oftentimes, this is terrible, but oftentimes when we as people of color are harmed, we are immediately criminalized in the media. We are blamed. You think about, and Trayvon Martin is a very notorious case, right? One of the most famous cases when it comes to stand your ground.
Yes.
We wanted to show this community, and as they were, and the body camera footage is undeniable. There's no reporter there. I'm not there. No one can. Again, the police certainly have their biases, but no one can accuse us as a filmmaking team of being on the ground, sort of, like manipulating anything.
Yes.
It happened as it was. So I think those things were also really important to us. I also didn't want to, when we decided to make a film, re-traumatize the community by going back and asking questions and sitting them in a chair and making them relive it. I felt we had a way to do this that was different, with all the material.
As immersive as the POV is, the point of view, is also disorienting drastically. So how did you navigate that as a...
That was the edit. We tried as much as possible. There were times where, and we used to joke, we were like, can't they stay still? Like, don't they know? Like, could you get a better angle? We wanted to call the police and be, and just be like, when you guys are in the field, can you just hold for 10 seconds? That's the rule, but that was not, of course, course.
But you
not-
also you embrace the chaos
That's what
because
we
it's
had
like
to do.
multi-cameras happening.
Yeah, that's what we had to do. But we tried to also, so obviously the pacing was really important to us. We wanted the viewer to have time to live in it and to adjust to it to a certain degree. So some of the moments we leave long. But
You also inserted beautifully this moments that I call moments of reflection.
Yeah, that was
Can you
first.
tell us about inserting those?
Sure. We wanted to do that. We basically, so that's footage we shot, and underneath you're hearing the detective interviews that they did with the community afterwards. And we put those in for context. We felt at one point when we were looking at it just as the body camera footage in its entirety, we felt people needed context. There needed to be some context. You needed to hear the voice of the community. Ajika is in the film, but she's not in it that much, right? And again, we were committed to living in this space. So we felt that having the chorus of the voice of the community again, lend itself to a deeper understanding and also a moment to breathe for you all, because the body cam footage is relentless. And sometimes we had 2 cops on scene, sometimes we had 15. Also, it was so hard to decipher the material because it came to us in a jumble. And we had to sync it. We had to figure out what camera went with what sound. We had to figure out the chronology. That took some time. But I think muddling through it really made it worth it. It feels like to us a visceral experience, and like a horror film. We wanted to make something that felt like a horror film or a thriller because I think that's the lived experience of that community.
Right. Yeah, Nikon, there's an incredible sense of discovery happening in front of our eyes when you watch the film. I'm curious, from your vantage point, how was it? In particular, I'll never forget, I think it was the 3rd time that Susan calls, that to me was a red flag. It's like, this woman is a psycho. And like, was that something that the police were aware of? Is that something that you guys discovered as you watched the body cam?
So that's a really good point, and it's something that we have another producer here, Elisa Payne. She's somewhere in the audience. She brings this up a lot. She was the first person to say that, as far as the police are concerned, when you watch the film, you get a sense that the police are really nice and really polite to this community. But really, what you're seeing is the neglect, right, and the bias that they have. Because they should have flagged Susan, in fact, because she was calling so often, right? They should have flagged her as a frequent caller and done something about her, removed her, done whatever, right? But instead, they just told the community, hey, kind of like bear with her, like, and they didn't really give the community any tools or any advice on what to do proactively. You know, as far as Susan, like the community never called the police on Susan once, right? And we did a screening with the community not too long ago, and one of the things that a person in the community said to us was, "Wow, you know, it seemed like she called so much more, you know." So this was like a very frequent thing that she did, and. Yeah, I don't think the police, I think the police did not serve the community as effectively as they should have.
I mean, this is an obvious question. If she had been a black woman, if we had dealt, would she have been treated? I mean, we're talking about white privilege here.
Yeah, if this, looking at it, we've thought about that, you know, it's so obvious. Even when you see her interrogated, you know, she's interrogated, and when they finally tell her that they're gonna place her under arrest, it takes them 4 minutes, right, from the time they say we're gonna place you under arrest to the time that she concedes and allows them to arrest her and go downstairs. That's 4 minutes time. And that's also a choice that Geeta made to make sure that we live in that moment for all of that time and feel that how uncomfortable that is, right? Because you're watching this play out in real time for the extent of the time that it happens.
I think Susan definitely, she weaponized her privilege, she weaponized her race, and she tried to weaponize the police against this community. And I think that's something that we see, unfortunately. I mean, the frequent calls, and this is a community where you see, again, they're a multiracial community living together harmoniously. You see them all, like you have the neighbor who's, a parent who says, to the cop, these are all my kids. You have the father who comes out and says, oh, I look out for these kids like they're my own, and then you have the children who clearly before the incident are playing in the street and they're secure. They feel so safe. They're confident. They're just precocious. They're children. Like, there's no adultifying them when we bear witness to what happened. And I think, in the aftermath, even Isaac, who's the oldest boy who ran, after his mother was shot, he knew where to go. He went right to the neighbors. So it tells you like how the fabric of that society was so beautiful and so united. And Susan, again, to me, I'm going to share this with you all, but I don't know if anyone has read the book It or Stephen King's It. There was something about it where you have this sort of idyllic little community and there's a threat and only the children can see it. And to me, that was sort of a euphemism for this situation where the adults dismissed her as a nuisance. I think the neighbors, again, thought she was annoying and she was using hate speech against children. She was, abusing them. She was throwing things at them. She was threatening them. She was harassing them. But again, it was really the children who knew how dangerous she might be, and then the worst possible thing happened.
The most stunning sequence is her in the room with the chair and the note taking. Can you tell us about? Even the angle that you were given that, but even the angle in which it's shot is a stunning sequence.
I'm obsessed with the chair, that whole sequence, but also the chair. I think the fact that the way that played out, and like I said, we decided to leave it. The pacing of that was really important to us. Obviously, as Nikon said, there's the scene where they finally convince her somehow, or they beg and plead and convince her to get up. And she does. And to me, that was also amazing how they just were all floored by her. They didn't know what to do. And I have no doubt, had she been a person of color, it would have been handled differently. But she, and then after they leave, right, you're just left with the chair. And we left that there because we wanted the audience, to have a moment to breathe. Mm-hmm. And to just process, because this is a film that takes a while to process and to understand,
Correct.
To absorb what they had just seen. But then when the investigator, the detective comes back and reads the note, and he reads the note obviously for the camera. It's just protocol, because if they lose it, right, or something happens to it, it's on record. If it gets destroyed, if the notepad gets thrown away, he just reads it on record. But I couldn't believe that. When I saw that, I was like...
I thought it was you that had told him, pick up the note and read it.
Somebody asked me that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that. Somebody was once, did you tell him to do that? I was like,
in fact, somebody would say, maybe don't put that in there because it looks staged. And we're like, we didn't stage that.
It's what he did. But it was the most, again, we put the music under that.
Yes.
We wanted to have like a sort of rumble of sound under it. And the sound design for this whole thing was very complicated because, as you can imagine, it's a small camera here with a terrible mono mic, so just the idea of being able to, and sometimes the cop hears sound is being picked up. They have walkies going off. Like, it was just, the sound was very challenging in this. It's not meant for a film. So the sound design was really important, but we wanted the music and the sound to build the discomfort, for it to be tonal, for you to make the audience feel like...
I'm glad you brought up the score. It was on my notes to bring up, is how it's very subtle. But at the same time, it reminds us that we're watching a movie. And in that particular scene, towards the end, we hear a little bit of the score. Can you tell us about? You started talking about your approach.
So I think we wanted, so Laura Heinzinger is the composer, sound designer, and her partner is Philippe Messiter. It's funny, they're a couple, but they work together. I've worked with them on a couple of the projects. And Laura's amazing at doing like a sound bed. You know, she takes, it's music, but it's also sound design, and it's tonal, and she basically, again, wants to evoke, she doesn't want the music to feel overlaid. She wants it to feel organic to the scenes, and again, to help build tension and feeling. And there was a crackling noise in that end. It almost felt almost like static that we felt was evocative of like police radio, and just a hum, right? A building hum that we wanted people to. Again, it's meant to keep you a little bit on the edge of your seat, that you know something is wrong, to feel that something is wrong.
You've addressed this, but I want to circle back because I'm just so impressed with the fact that this is a film, cinematically such a powerfully made film. Yes, the subject matter, in different hands, it would have been a powerful documentary. But with you, it is a movie experience. Were you conscious of that aspect, that I want to make something that is cinematic?
Yes, 100%. We wanted to make something. It's interesting because in the beginning, when we thought about taking this out and we were looking for support to make the film, I think when we talked to people, again, there's folks we know in the industry, streamers, et cetera, they saw it as a true crime procedural. And I was like, oh, that is not what we're trying to do. We were trying to make something elevated. To me, we wanted to make a piece of art that, again, is a Trojan horse for the message or the issues, but not to make a piece where we beat people over the head with, again, the advocacy of it, because we trust our audiences. That is really critical to me. And again, that show and not tell in this was so important. And also just, again, having come up with narrative, I had the honor of working with some pretty incredible directors in my time, so that their influences all kind of speak to this. And it's like Spike Lee, Robert Altman, some of the folks that I worked with in the early days. I felt like in their, similarly, I was inspired by them, and in their hands, something like this, again, would be elevated to something more cinematic, and not just for television or a procedural.
Has there ever been a documentary made like this with body cam?
So that's something that I don't think so. I've never seen one, but it's something we would have to fact check, to be honest. I don't think I've ever seen anything that has this, because I've never seen this much material. I've never seen this much body camera leading up to an incident. I do think we've certainly seen things that have GoPros, where people use GoPros or cell phones, but I don't think there's ever been anything made. 90% of police body camera footage.
Nikon, one of the powers of this film is that you guys chose for it to be chronological. You didn't play with the timeline. It's just straight line the way it happened. Can you tell us about your choice? You laugh. Why?
Because we often, Elisa, who's the other producer here, we laugh that sometimes we maybe wanted to play with that a little bit, and
sometimes we disagree.
Yeah. So we I'll give an example. So when we see the part where Susan, we don't see Susan, but we see the man. What does he have? A tire shop, right? Right? And Susan bangs her car into the fence, and he's complaining about it. Well, initially I thought, well, maybe we should put that at the top, just to give context to what kind of person Susan is. And that wasn't in chronological order. So Geeta, like, no, that doesn't work. And Viri was like, no, that doesn't work. And so we kind of went back and forth about it. And we put it where it goes chronologically. So, and that's the right choice. That's the right choice.
We weren't always sure.
Yeah.
There was also disagreement about what the open should be.
Right.
I wanted to open with the drone footage, I just want everybody to know this. And I was overruled by my producers who were like, no, that doesn't work. But I just wanted to open with the drone footage and the voices of the detectives. But they felt that we needed something that, particularly Lisa, she said it first, then everybody else I showed it to. But they felt they needed something more dynamic up top to set us up and to draw the audience in. So.
But to your point, having it in chronological order was so dynamic because it makes you feel like this was just one person with a camera following this this story the entire time. To come to find out, oh no, this is several, like Geeta said, it could be up to 15 people shooting this, and they don't know that the next person is taking over the next scene or shot. Or
Plus
whatever.
the chronological urges us to discover.
Yes.
And there.
It builds. It builds. And it was, Susan, you see her unravel, honestly, more and more in the footage. Like, it just becomes, you sort of see it build, her case against the community in her mind, et cetera. And you see the community just, more and more confused by her in ways. And I think that was really, it was really important because it is cumulative, right? What led up to the incident. And then afterwards, of course, similarly, it's cumulative. She was, was pulled in twice. Like she came for the interview, the detectives interviewed her once, then they had to let her go because Stand Your Ground requires an investigation. She went home, you see the community's response to her, how angry they were.
Yes.
The neighbor who screams at the police officer and was like, make your life easier, make your life easier, that to me. And you also see the community like hurt and angry and, again, just outraged about what happened. So I think the chronology, it mattered so much, the way that the story built.
Tell me about the documentary ends, and then through the credits, we have the incredible catharsis of the verdict. Can you tell us about the development of that?
Sure. So basically, when we finished the film, when we originally thought we finished the film, because our plan was to send it to the Sundance Film Festival, that was the only way we saw that we could get distribution, really. It was that we had to, because we'd made this thing in a very small team, really close people, and then we were going to, very independently, and then, so Sundance was the way. So the trial had not happened by the time we sent it to Sundance, and we didn't know if the trial would happen in the time frame that we were going to put it out into the world. So at that time, we planned to just have a card saying, you would see the end, the children, hear Al Sharpton, et cetera, and then a card saying Susan's trial is still pending, and we don't know what will happen. And then the trial had happened in November. And I believe we had gotten into Sundance, and I think the trial happened. So we were like, oh, shit. But at the same time, that was such an incredible moment. But we didn't feel, and we had questions. We were like, should we weave this? I actually, at one point, was like, do we weave the trial throughout the film? And then everything is a flashback? And then, but, we didn't, so it raised a lot of issues. And then the editor, Viri, and I talked, and we came up with just having it in the credits. Because the film, honestly, it could have ended with Susan's arrest. But we didn't want Susan to have the last word. So then the funeral was important to us. We wanted to leave it with the children, really, with sort of you hearing from the children and the family that we felt they deserved to be centered. And then so that's why the trial's in the credits. Again, it's an important moment. It also makes people sit through the credits. We realized afterwards, it will be on Netflix, and they can't do the thing where you fast forward. So
you've told them that they need to continue till the end.
We have to. Yeah, the credits are part of the film.
That infuriates
Wasn't that
me.
smart of us? I'm like you have to see our names. But more, it was just that we felt, again, that was the last word, but it didn't feel like the most important part of the story.
Yeah.
But it was organic. It was an organic choice.
No, but to me, it's wonderful to hear how it came about, but it's so powerful, the fact that it ends where, with her story, with AJ's story, and then we find out it's kind of like a coda.
Yeah. I think for us, there is no, of course, happy ending to this. There is no justice for this. Like, the worst possible things happened for both of them, honestly. Like, Susan, and I think I want to just say, Susan's access to a gun and sort of the failures of the police also ruined her own life. Like, her access to a gun means that she now spends the rest of her life in prison. Yeah. And she should have been stopped. There should have been an intervention of some sort beforehand. And obviously the community, Ajika's family's life has been destroyed. And, you know, there's a lot of love and support for them, and that they have a loving grandmother who's in the film. The children do, but they're forever scarred. Yeah. But so I think and the community. Yeah, the community is also scarred. But I do think the only thing that we hope with this ending also is that it's a deterrent. Maybe it's a deterrent for anybody else who tries to abuse this law, you know, stand your ground. And, you know, again, our goal is ultimately to change gun laws and to stand your ground. We feel there has to be all this reform. But we're hoping that people see that she got convicted, so that she didn't, like what happened with Trayvon Martin, walk away.
There's so much I gotta ask you, but we gotta wrap up. The Freedom of Information Act, in the current regime that we're in, I hate using that term, but that's where we're in, we wouldn't have. That's also in peril. The Freedom of Information Act.
It's in peril, and so that means I'm basically right. You know, when they were able to do it, it was under the previous administration when they were able. You know, and also Florida, for everything else that it is. It's interesting. They have the Sunshine Acts, you know, the Sunshine Laws. I think where, again, it is easy in some ways. It is easier to get material from the police department, and it becomes public record. So honestly, anyone could have access to it. You know, we were obviously involved, so it was of interest to us. But that is in peril, and it's so important. The other thing that's been brought up to us too is the use of body camera footage for police is now also, there's states that are trying to change that don't no longer want the use of body camera footage. And body camera footage is so, even though, again, it is a tool of surveillance, it is also so important.
Yes.
You know, without this, we don't know that Susan would have been convicted. Right. If they didn't have that record that went back 2 years. Yeah. So,
Nikon, your film is a wonderful legacy about AJ. You know, can you tell us about her the importance of her legacy?
I'm going to let you tell that story because you tell it really well. So I'm just telling. No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. He's telling me to take this question. So there is a story that we want to share that Pamela often does if she's with us, but she couldn't be here today, and she sends love, of course, to every audience, but she sees this as, she takes a lot of strength from Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till, who basically had her son when he was murdered and lynched during the civil rights movement, who had an open casket funeral and told the press to come in and take pictures because she wanted the world to know what happened to her baby. So that is Pam. That's the ethos of who she is. She feels that, again, even though there's things in here that are painful to watch, you know, we think of Emmett Till, we think of George Floyd, and how bearing witness is so important, because without it, these things can continue to happen in the dark. But so this, she feels, is Ajika's legacy in some way. She wants to take her pain and make it into purpose. But she tells a story about Ajika, that Ajika, if you will remember her this way, she was a really bright, beautiful, fun person, big smile. She was young and she had really big dreams. She was an amazing mother, single mother to 4 kids, but she also had plans for her own life. She wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she and Pam were very close. They would speak every day, and Ajika would always tell her all her, you know, her next plan, you know, how she was going to take over the world, and she was like, whatever it was. And Pam would kind of laugh at her, as mothers do, and be like, okay, baby, you know, you do that. And she said that in one of their last conversations, Ajika said to her, you know, you laugh at me, but just wait, one day the whole world is going to know my name. So that's what we are left with, and that has made, we believe that Ajika would have wanted this. She wouldn't have wanted us to sit at home and cry. She would have wanted us, and this was grief work for us, but she would have wanted us to go be out in the world. She passed away. She was murdered standing up for her children. And so she would have wanted us to stand up for her and for others so that this doesn't happen again. So you all now, Pam would tell you, you all now are part of that legacy and would ask you to remember her name.
Well, it's an extraordinary film. I'm a big fan, and I'm so happy that you guys were here today. Really honored to have you in the room.
It's an honor for us. Thank you to share this story with everybody. So thank you for being here when it's so beautiful out.
Yeah, and please spread the word. The film will be in Netflix.
It will be on Netflix October 17th.
Please spread the word. Thank you for being here, everybody.